Hey guys, this is Alex from Wilkinson Audio. This time around, we're going to be mixing another song, another metalcore song, using only, again, stock plugins and AKG 702 headphones. This song is called An Endless Decline by Sam Whitaker, and we can just check out his mix and what that sounds like here. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea what that sounds like. It's pretty cool, pretty awesome song. You might notice there's no vocals, it's instrumental. And we can see how some of the, because we have the files here, he lets you download them if you want. You can download the stems, like what I'm mixing here, which is probably great for practice. So the drum samples are Superior Drummer 2. Here's the guitar used and stuff like that. The MIDI bass is Alchemist Grind, and the guitar amp is Lepu, I don't know how you pronounce it, Lepu, Legion, and then Catharsis Impulses. These are free, so just so you know. So if you want the guitar tone that he's using, that's what he's saying that he used for that, so kind of cool. All right, anyways, let's get started. I've already organized the project. You can see in the very first Mixing with Alex, I show how to do this. It's very simple. Anyways, this is how I typically lay stuff out. And we're going to start in this video here. We're going to start with drums. So let's just hear what we have to work with. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I forgot. I think there's some effects in the song that I forgot to throw in here. Synths and effects. There we go. So let's throw all those in here. Separate tracks. And drag those back to the start. Oops. There we go. And I'll make another folder for those quickly here. We'll name it Effects. And we'll put all this stuff in it. And we'll give it a random color, which is too similar to another random color. There we go. Nope, still too similar. All right, weird off brown gray it is. Guess that's the price you pay for randomly coloring everything. All right, let's start and have a listen to the drums, see what we got. Now just the drums. They already sound fairly processed, so I don't think we really need to do too much to them. Let's just dive right in here. Sorry, my mouse wheel kind of sucks and doesn't really work. If you're wondering why I'm always doing why I have trouble resizing tracks, that's why. I should switch mice. Okay. So the first thing we're gonna need to do here is we need to balance the levels of the microphones and stuff. They already sound not terrible to me. With these using headphones, I know for a fact that these headphones have a pretty interesting image of the high end. I believe that it's enhanced in some areas, but dips way down frequency-wise in other areas. So it's very difficult to dial in high end cymbal stuff on these headphones. So we're going to definitely reference as we do the volume of these drums. So we're just going to use Saw's the Law by Whitechapel. Okay, and then we're going to kind of do a level similar to that. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. There's room for some variance between mixes, obviously, but just to make sure that you know, we're giving ourselves the best possible chance of mixing this as balanced as possible when we're just using headphones, because you know, it's nice to have little tricks and stuff we can do to make sure that we stay objective and don't accidentally mix stuff so it's totally skewed frequency wise and have to redo the mix later. Okay, so that's a little better. Same thing with the snare and kick and everything. Let's listen to this. And this will all change. This is just to baseline stuff here. And let's listen to how much room tone there is in these drums. I'd actually say we're fairly close right there. All right, so now that we have that stuff, hang on, I'm just gonna pan the hi-hat. Actually, it's already panned. You can see that it's on one channel we have information, so it's already panned for us. So if we leave it a regular stereo track, it'll still only have information on, I believe this is the left channel. You can see, oh, there's some information on the right, but it's at a much lower volume. You can always, you can change the display size of the waveforms by holding shift and then pressing up or down on the arrow keys. Well, holding shift and then pressing and holding up and down, you can adjust the size that waveforms are displayed. Helps if you're editing and stuff like that. Anyways, let's start actually EQing and mixing. So first thing, we're going to check out the room tone here. No real reason why, just got to start somewhere. And we're just going to get the attack the way we want it. And the release. We just want that kind of vibing and stuff like that. And then we're going to adjust our ratio. Which to me, anything over 10 to 1 is basically limiting, and this sounds better to me if it's just limited, basically. And the knee size, it does something that's hard to visualize. It gradually, instead of having your threshold be at an exact point, it gradually starts compressing into that point. So it's hard to describe. You might have to look up something on the internet about how knee size on compressors work. But for this, I think I want a really large knee size because I want it basically kind of always compressing the signal. You'll hear it. And RMS size, I think I've said this before, but I'm not sure technically what this actually does. I think it's something to do with the amount of sample size. I think it's to do with RMS would lead me to believe that it's taking the average level of a certain amount of samples and then the compressor reacts to that. So if it's larger, it's averaging out, this is just totally a guess, it's averaging out more samples and then doing the compression based on that. So if you make this very, very like 0 milliseconds, it's going to act like a very quick compressor, like a FET compressor, and compress immediately. So if we put this to 0, it'll act like a FET, like a 1176. Or if we make it longer than that, it'll act more like a Fairchild or a Veramu or a tube compressor. But that's up to you if you want to use that stuff. Typically for room sounds, we want them crushed and kind of distorting a bit, so something like a FET compressor would work well for that. Okay, and let's EQ this. And you'll notice something here that is kind of interesting. Actually, I probably should have done the EQing before the compression, but yeah. Typically in rooms, we're not going to want this many cymbals, like this, that much cymbal sound and stuff like that. It's mostly to beef up the mid-range. If you keep a lot of this information, high-end information or low-end information, you will lose clarity in the mix. But there's a balance to all this for sure. So we'll have to change our threshold a bit here. And you'll notice if that snare jumps out too much, it's because it's letting the transient through, and the snare happens to be very loud in this. So we can use the attack to catch it quicker. If we with lower attack time, we'll catch that snare transient faster. Okay, so you get the idea of how that works. And that snare to me sounds like there's a specific kind of resonance jumping out of me that I kind of want to get rid of. Like it has a lot of body. And we can do it like this. We could just sweep through kind of like this. But you'll notice it's kind of difficult to hear EQ if you have effects after it. Typically a compressor makes it very difficult to hear. So a clever thing, I think it's a great trick and something I always do. Like it's one I do this all the time. You apply a new EQ last thing in your effects chain, and then you use that EQ to sweep through the whole chain, or to sweep through the end resulting signal. So let's say, I'm not 100% sure, but let's say that's a frequency I want to get rid of. Instead of applying it here on this EQ, yeah, that actually is pretty close to the frequency I want to get rid of actually, but instead of applying it and leaving it on this EQ, we take these settings, 800 and bandwidth around 1, and then we just apply these back here. And then you just do your gain. And then, yeah, and that's an easy way to kind of dial in EQ if it's before a bunch of effects. It's much easier to hear the EQing if you do it after. So that's going to be our room sound. We'll do our overheads next. Let's dial out some mud here. These overheads, like this stuff to me sounds a little bit pre-processed. I don't think we'll have to do too much work here. It already sounds like someone's kind of like done some work to it. With overheads, you'll typically, this is kind of difficult. You'll want to ring out whistling cymbals and stuff like that. And I'm noticing on these headphones, I can't hear these frequencies up here very well. Like I can't tell if there's whistling frequencies up in this range. And I think it's just kind of a limitation of these headphones. Like I can't dial them out. There might be some, there might not be. I'll try, but like that could be one, maybe. I can't really tell. Possible. Let's say it is. And you don't have to do this. You only want to do this if you actually hear the whistling resonances of cymbals. Don't just look for them. Otherwise, you'll remove too much of your overhead sound. You don't want to be looking for them, but if you notice them, definitely grab a really thin band, really like low Q, and then just sweep through, find them, and take them out. You're gonna want to do a significant amount of gain reduction until you can't hear them. I'm doing -2 because I don't even know if this is actually a resonance I'm hearing. Yeah, but if you actually had one, you could do, you know, like -10 or -6 or wherever it disappears and kind of blends back into the cymbal sound would be ideal for that. Okay, so the kick drum we'll do next. I'm not really doing this in any order particularly. To me, that sounds like it's done. Like, I don't see any reason to really change any of this, the sound of that. It already sounds so processed, I don't want to really touch it. I don't really want to do any additional processing to it. Hi-hat, it's hard to say. It usually blends in pretty low level. Hi-hats are just nice to have. It's nice to have a hi-hat mic just for automation purposes. You can raise and lower it in certain parts or whatever. You can get more body out of it if you're doing typical metal overheads. I should mention this because I'm not doing it because this sounds a little processed to me. But you typically just take a high pass and go about 700 if you're not planning to use any of the shell sound in your overheads, which you might not be, because sometimes you'll have like maybe a subpar drummer or something like that, and he doesn't really hit the shells well, and you don't want the sound of the shells really influencing the rest of your drum mix, because you want to cover it up with samples that sound good. And you'll just do like a high pass somewhere in here, and then you'll only have the cymbal sound left over. I'll show you what that sounds like. So it's not really much of the kit in there, it's mostly just the cymbal sound. I don't typically do that because I kind of like the sound of the shells in there a bit. It adds a bit of life and interest, I find. But it really depends on the sound of the overheads. If you know it's going to be muddy or whatever, definitely high pass it. It varies so much. You just have to really learn to listen for it and stuff like that. Kick, to me, sounds fine. Hi-hat is probably going to be fine. I'll just make sure there's not any crazy loan information. That sounds even enough. I mean, obviously tweak this stuff to your taste and preference. Let's listen to the snare. To me, that also sounds fine. I would only change these if we needed to. Like if I heard something else, I would only change or EQ that if I heard it messing with some other instrument or something, and we needed to carve out space for one or the other. To me, I don't hear any weird resonance or anything like that. It already is hitting hard. It sounds like it's already been somewhat compressed and stuff, and like it's pretty much good to go. And that's a mistake I think a lot of people make when they're working on new songs and stuff, or when they're new to audio engineering, is that they process things for the sake of processing them because they don't know what processed things sound like, and like that is already compressed, it's already EQ'd. If you EQ and compress it again, I mean, and the chances are it was done by an audio engineer who's fairly good because it came with Superior, so it's probably done by somebody who's a pretty good audio engineer anyway, and they probably EQ'd it to be, you know, a pretty good sound. So it's like you're taking a good sound, and then you're kind of like processing it, like why? Because it's already done. Like you know, it's kind of like just like, I don't know, cooking something that's already cooked. You'll just like dry it out. Tom sounds. I imagine these might be on the same lines that might be processed already. Yeah, like there's not nearly as much mid-range as you typically find. Yeah, you can see there's almost no mid-range there. There's kind of a weird resonance here. I don't know if we'll actually be able to get rid of it. You might have to use like a multiband or something to get rid of a resonance like that where it's kind of wavering in and out. Because if we just EQ it out, we're taking a lot of the information out of here even when it's not resonating. So I'll leave it for now. And normally you'd have to pan your toms, but you can see these have, they're stereo, and they have varying amounts of frequency information, so they're actually pre-panned, even when they're centered. You can hear that there pretty easily. Okay, and so let's take our drum bus here, and we'll do some parallel compression. And there's 3 ways we can do that. One way is we just take, even it out by clipping the transients a bit. And that's one way you can level things out. Obviously adjust your attack and release times to taste. Another thing you can do is you can slam it. And then, obviously that sounds awful, but adjust your attack and release times. I'll just do it temporarily like this. And then add the dry signal back in, so you're parallel compressing it, so it mixes this in with the original signal. Which makes it punchier. That's a pretty common technique to use in metalcore. A lot of people do it to just the shells instead of the whole drum track. Like, so they'll just do it to the snare and the toms, and the rest and the kick, and then they'll process the rest separately. But I'm just doing it on the bus right now, just to keep things quick. And yeah. And the third thing you can do is a really low ratio, and then you just compress the whole signal. And that just kind of glues everything together and adds a little bit of cohesiveness to the whole drum mix there. So let's do the metalcore thing where we're gonna slam it and then parallel compress it. In that last one, sorry, hang on, let me demonstrate that last one again because I had it parallel compressed. So it's just compressing the whole signal a little bit in this technique. So let's do the one where we slam it again, the regular metalcore parallel processing kind of thing. And note that things always sound better when they're louder, so always be careful to level match when you're trying to figure out what actually sounds better. Make sure you're listening to it at the exact same volume, which we are not doing now. This will clearly sound better because we just added the signal in again and the process signal, and then we added the dry signal, so it's much louder. So be careful to compare things when you're doing your own research. Make sure they're at the same level. And I'm just going to go back to the wet signal only again because I'm going to set the attack and release times. Oh, sorry, I have the ratio totally wrong. I was wondering about that. I was like, And that's our drum sound we're going to roll with, and it's all done. I don't know if the overheads are too quiet. Let's reference again before we call this done. I'd say they're a little bit too quiet. And let's just play with our room to get the fader set right here. Let's just bring it up till it's how we want it. And it sounds kind of like a cohesive whole more so than a bunch of separate close mics. That's what room mics are for. They really bring the whole kit together. If you don't have a room mic, it sounds very separate. Which can be cool if that's the sound you like, but let's bring the room mic. You can kind of hear the washiness of cymbals from the room mic coming in there. And it increases the sustain and of everything as well, so you can kind of hear it coming in around here. And so we kind of want it so that you don't really hear it, but you notice it when you mute it. Somewhere around there, like that'd be fine. All right, so that's our drum mix, and we'll do some bass next, and then we'll do some guitars, and then we should be good. All right, cool. Thanks for watching.